I won the Ontario Home Builder of the Year for small volume. So that is, for me, like that is the Oscar for me. It's, I cannot, you know, it's what I've worked towards my entire life. I'm a framer by trade, so I've always built homes, but I always wanted to be the contractor, right? To do the home from start to finish. There's always an opportunity, and you having their contact information. So it's as simple as, send an email, ask a question, hey, or let's catch up, have a call, whatever the case may be. And I think, when you build that, that book of contacts, and I would consider them friends, it's the best tool in the box.
Did you just finish your stint as the Ontario?
Yeah, just finished the end of September.
How was that?
It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I'm still on the board as past president for the next year, and I still have a few files to kind of help them with, but yeah, it was amazing. Like,
what got you into, did you have to run for president, or how does the selection process kind of work?
So being actively involved in my local, so the Home Builders Association is a 3-tier level association. So being a member of your local, and me being Chatham-Kent, you're a member of Ontario, your provincial level, and then you're a member of Canada as well. And so being part of that over the years, because I spent, I think, 4 years as president in Chatham, and on the board for many years, and just kind of different positions throughout that. The way our board structure was at OHBA back a few years ago, when I was president, was when your president was actually a board member of the Ontario Home Builders Association. It's different now, but that's how I got into kind of like, meet people and, get more involved in different parts of the, our industry. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they sort of, pick people along the way that they think will be good fits and good leaders, and that's sort of how I've got up the ladder.
When you joined the Home Builders Association from a local perspective, what sparked that reasoning behind putting your name in the hat for a volunteer position, given how busy you must have been? Right?
So for me, as a company, I started it on my own when I was 22, I think it was. Sure. And I just, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a family. It wasn't a family business. So for me, I looked at my local association as like an amazing networking opportunity to like meet other builders and trades and suppliers and like pick their brains about, different things they may run into, or just industry stuff, right? Great networking opportunity. And when I got involved, it was amazing. Like, I should have did it earlier. I waited, a few years of being in business before I did that. But they kind of were like, hey, this is a new a builder that's a newer builder. He's a younger generation builder at the time, and he'd be a great fit to kind of come on our board and lead our organization. So that was sort of like the stepping stone for me to kind of get in locally, and then eventually obviously work my way up.
Well, I guess in the first couple of years, what was the impact that the association had on you and your business? Like, did you get any direct benefits from the networking that you imparted into your own business practice?
From the local association?
From the local.
So it was amazing. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was, talking to other builders, guys that I looked up to when I was starting, companies that have been around a long time, and getting to know them and asking them questions that, I really wouldn't have anyone else to ask to. And I think one of the things about being part of an association in your industry is your colleagues, right? Yeah, you're competitors, but you're also colleagues, and you lean on one another for ideas and questions about the industry or maybe things you're running into on jobs. So the impact that way was incredible for me. And then obviously you start to gain credibility as a business because you're part of that organization, right? There's a code of conduct that we have to follow to be a member. And so that, it all molds together into, helping your business overall.
Probably makes you tighten up a little bit too, right? Like when you get in a room with those people and you're going to see them on a regular basis, you kind of want to keep up, right? Getting around other people that are doing stuff probably drives you a little bit versus when you're an island to yourself in business. I find, especially say in real estate, agents that don't get around other people that are really driving can fall into really bad habits and really bad patterns, right?
I can't agree more with you. I think it really motivates you actually when I really think back at it. And even being part of, the president of the Ontario Home Builders Association, like there's certain things that we've had to deal with, and it motivates you from a personal level, and you bring new ideas. You know, I've been in business for 27 years, and I'm more motivated now than ever.
Yeah.
And I think largely due to being part of this organization. So I 100% agree. Like it keeps you sharp and motivates you to become the best you can be as a business.
Give me an example of a challenge you faced early on, like just from the local board level. What were the types of things that you guys were trying to tackle?
So I think way back, and we've, ironically enough, going through the development charge phase, I got brought into that file going back, quite a few years ago. And that for me at the time was like sort of a new thing, I understood it, but I've never been a part of discussing dialogue with our municipality about, how do we get to the number that we should be at? And they were very forthcoming back then with, discussing that with us. So I was part of a small group to work with them to kind of figure out where the happy medium was for an industry, as well as the our local, like our Chatham-Kent itself. Sure. And then, years go by, we recently were back into that discussion again with our municipality as time goes by. Those topics always come up. And
sure.
So that was probably...
As markets shift, are they like, well, let's just remove them now and get off the prices?
Well, I wish it was that easy. That was a real huge eye-opener for me, is like, oh, wow, okay. And, gaining that experience was really handy for the past time that we had to deal with it as well.
So then when you moved up, I guess, from the local level to the provincial level, was it bigger problems and more, again, province-wide topics that you guys were dealing with, or what was the difference between, I guess, local and working provincially?
Yeah, so I think a lot of different things. I think being the leader of that organization, you have 4,000 plus members to deal with. So you have, you always have to deal with, why are we a member? What benefits do we have as being a member? But then we also have different policies and different items as an industry that we work on with the government, and making sure that we get the proper dialogue from our members to make the right decisions and the right ideas and solutions that we put forward for the government. So yeah, it's a larger scale. And I'll be honest, probably a little bit more pressure as well, but good pressure.
What are some of the topics of conversation these days from a provincial level that you guys are having?
Well, I think the affordability of housing is scary. And I think looking at the amount of homes we need, like 1.5 million, which is probably not even the right number anymore. I mean, I hear numbers of 1.7, 1.8. That's a lot of homes that we've never built. And now the prices have gotten so expensive to build. It's a scary time for us, and we have to work together, as an industry with all levels of government to make this thing work. And that is going to be the challenge ahead for sure.
Yeah, if you break it down, I mean, land costs, material costs, labor costs, obviously taxes and dev charges, and then soft associated closing fees. Where in there do you think is the biggest opportunity for affordability when it comes to home prices?
For me, I mean, if we take out the GST, the rebate portion of it, which absolutely needs to be discussed, we look at, you mentioned labor, the cost of building. Those numbers aren't going to change. Yeah. Like, people aren't going to work for less money in today's world. I mean, times change. I look at it as the cost of houses to build are going to every year probably get a little bit more expensive. So that number's the number, but it's the fees and taxes is where it has to change. Yeah. Or it's just a circle that we'll just keep chasing around and round and round, and we'll never get to the bottom of it. So that's something that needs to be addressed across the board, and it needs to be addressed immediately. I mean, you look at the banks, and you look at interest rates. Absolutely plays a major part of it.
Massive.
For sure. But there still has to be a number that people can afford. So it's finding that balance.
Yeah, well, we're seeing big changes in people's perception as to what the normal product is for the market, right? So those houses that were 1.5, we're seeing smaller square footages, maybe less flashy finishes, trying to get under that $1 million mark, and people are just trying to find the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Or townhouses now becoming a very typical entry-level product, where before in smaller communities you would see single family detached was what you bought, like that was your first house. Where now a lot of projects are rolling out, it's semi-detached, it's townhouses, and we're seeing them in the 450 to the 550 range, which seems more reasonable than we were tracking, where townhouses in London, where we are today, were selling for close to $1 million at one point, right? And houses were at the 1.7 to 1.8 mark. I remember the first houses I lived in were $88,000 or $133,000, $140,000. Those days are long gone. Are you looking also at opportunity zones beyond primary market areas like a London, like a Chatham? Like, do you find that the other communities are starting to draw people in for development as well?
I think smaller areas, smaller towns are a great place to build and invest. They offer a great way of life, a smaller town feel. You know, you still have schools, you still have hockey teams, sports, arenas, those sorts of things that families look for.
Yeah.
You know, hospitals, doctors, the amenities that you want. But the cost of living per se can definitely be a lot less. Not always significantly less, depending on where.
You go. Yeah.
But it's 100%. I see that happening, and it's sprawling out, and I think we're going to continue to see that, especially when we look at, you know, the work possibilities with a lot of people being able to work remotely. Maybe not always, but you know, if you go into work 2 or 3 days a week, but you're able to work from home, like that's happened a lot now. It's almost common, where it never was before, prior to it as much. So it's definitely that shift is being, I see that 100%, and I think you're going to continue to see it.
Yeah, you look at regional spaces, right? You look at GTA, LGA, you look at various areas, Chatham, Kent, you can go down to Sarnia, Lambton Shores. I almost think when you look at things from a regional perspective, the habits we're seeing are buyers are choosing whether they want to make a sacrifice short term for longer term equity. Mm-hmm. So move to an emerging market like a Lucan, like an Exeter, knowing that in the next 5 or 10 years, sure, maybe they want access to some of the amenities that they would living in downtown London for the next 5 or 10 years. But as those prices would double over the next, call it 10 years, then they have that flexibility and that ability. So put your head down, work, build some equity, or other people want to go the other way and not buy it all and live in downtown Toronto, have access to every sporting event, every restaurant that they could possibly want. But I think it really comes down to the consumers. With the shift in the marketplace over the last couple of years, I guess you were 2023 to 2024 president-elect for Ontario. Before that, you would have been local at Chatham, Kent?
So I was on the board with OHBA for a few years prior to that.
During the pandemic? Like 2020, 2020?
Yeah.
What was that like? I'm going through the pandemic on the board.
It was a very, very tough. I think it was around 3 years in total.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, our president at the time, he stayed on for 3 years because we couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And then we had to deal with locals, making sure all of our locals were supported, just because, you have a catastrophe like that.
Sure.
And, a lot of locals they have events that they rely on heavily for their, for financial purposes for their own local, and not being able to hold those events.
Yeah.
So we got through it. I believe we're stronger than ever now, but yeah, it was tough. It's just like any other business, right? You have to figure out a way to make it work for your business, and in our case, for all of our locals, and come out on the other end. And we've done that, so.
Yeah, during that pandemic time, I mean, real estate got thrown onto the world stage, right? It was the number one topic of conversation. The election that we had previously, I mean, it was the number one conversation piece. Coming into this next election cycle, I still think affordability is at the very top of the list. But I also think people succeed in spite of politics, in spite of policy, figure out a way to kind of work through the changes in leadership and the changes in policy. As a builder yourself, and I want to get a bit into your backstory, what are some of the shifts that you've made over the last couple of years in your organization, how you approach building, product selection? Like, I'm sure your wheels are always spinning trying to find where the market is for your product.
Yeah, so being a custom home builder, I feel like I've always built a great home. I always feel like, oh, I'm above code. I offer that as sort of my standard,
Sure.
right? And I think one of the things that I've really focused on is efficiency and energy efficiency. I'm almost certified now to do net zero homes. I'm actually working on my first net zero home,
Cool.
which I believe is the future. And I think that, for me, when I look at the affordability of homes and I look at, what I see over my time building homes and what people want to spend in upgrades, and, you see the same things kind of over and over again where people want to put their money. I feel like this is the new upgrade. I feel like, triple pane glass, a way more solid building envelope to your home. Those things are actually going to make you money, right? And then you have the opportunity to make it net zero, like full net zero, not just net zero ready, and add the solar component to where you're actually producing as much energy as you use. And I just think that with it costing so much to buy a new home, why would you not want to save money along the way and have a proven home that's going to save you money every month? I just see that as something that I believe in. And so I'm putting a lot of focus on energy efficiency moving forward. I still want, the bells and whistles. I want the house to look, the way I like them to look. That's never going to change. But I'm going to be, pushing more of an upgrade in a different area than I think I ever have in my life.
Yeah, the intangibles that you can't see, the science of the mechanics of how a house works. 'Cause I mean, land, foundation, you have obviously your framing, and then you have your drywall, your interior components, and all those things. But it's all the in-between stuff that you're talking about that maybe people don't think about as much versus a consumer. Square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms. Am I going to put a pool in the backyard, right?
Yeah. And I don't think the amount that it actually costs you to get to where, you're living a lot more comfortable, the air, the comfort, and you're saving money. To me, it's like, why wouldn't you do that? So I see the shift big time, and I think it's going to get, larger and larger as time goes on.
Well, you see how much money they spend on the food that they ingest, right? And the water quality, and that's been a big conversation piece too. Then you think of where do you spend a lot of time in your house with the air that you're breathing, like you mentioned. I don't think people realize the difference between, say, a net zero home from a quality of life standpoint and a home that is just conventional. Is radon something that you are paying a lot of attention to as well too? We hear it coming up more and more in conversations.
So it's pretty well standard now that we have to prepare for that. You never know where it's at. That's the problem. It could be on one lot and not on the next. So, doing a simple rough in to be able to vent out the potential of that, it's a simple process that is now a standard. So 100%. That's something that's, in the code. So
and we see it even coming up from conversation from a sales standpoint, because once consumers are educated on it, you're trying to future-proof your business, and the work you're doing now is for the business you are going to be doing in 2 to 3 years. Going back to the beginning when you started, you said you were around 21 and change. What did you do before you were a builder?
So I'm a framer by trade, so I've always built homes, but I always wanted to be the contractor, right? To do the home from start to finish. And so I learned the trade from my uncle. Actually had a renovation company when I was in grade 8, I think it was. My mom's like, hey, you got to get a job. I'm like, I'm not detasseling corn. I've already done that 1 year, and that's not my thing. But every kid should do it, I believe. So I just went to work for my uncle. I mean, he was a renovator. He did shingling, windows, doors, decks, just remodeling stuff. And that's sort of where I got the taste of the industry. And I loved it. Yeah. I just didn't think of it as a career because I was just a kid. And I worked, kind of all through high school. And by the end of high school, I was running a crew, sort of installing, windows and doors and decks, and loving it.
How many people's in a crew?
There's usually 2 or 3 of us. Okay. Just a small crew, but
Was it friends of yours or?
No. He had different workers come and go, and we would, whoever was around, it was usually, me or the one other guy that worked for him at the time for a long time. We basically, we managed like what we needed. So he trusted us at that point where it was like, okay, this, these windows need to go be put in. Like we'd done enough of it. We understood it. So then by the end of high school, and even at that point, I didn't even think of it as a career. It was a job that I loved.
Just what you did.
And then I remember my guidance counselor handed me a brochure from Fanshawe College, actually. He's like, hey, it's time to, like, you got to go to college.
What's your career? Yeah.
Here's a brochure. Find something because you got to apply here soon. I'm like, oh, okay. And I opened it up as construction engineering technology. I'm like, oh, okay. There's my calling. This is what I do. So that's how it started. And then when I got there, and I always knew at that point, I'm like, I really want to build homes. Like that part, we'd done a little bit of framing, but not building full homes all the time. And I remember one of the sites we went to visit out by, I think it was Masonville Mall, before all that was built. It was all wood frames everywhere.
My buddy's family used to own all the land. Actually, where Future Shop. Well, Future Shop doesn't exist anymore. Where Best Buy is, all the way up to the hill. Actually, where all the big houses are now.
Yeah. So I remember like it was yesterday, touring one of those sites, and I'm just like, wow. Walked in after it was framed, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. And so after I graduated, I got out. One of my best buddies, his now wife's stepfather was a framer, and he was kind of from around my town, my area where I grew up. And so I got on with him, and we just frame. We were a small crew, and we framed like house after house out. We were like framers. And
were you guys the best at what you did?
Oh, absolutely, we were the best.
I love it.
We were the most efficient. We were the fastest. We were great.
And you were probably great because you were focusing on what you were good at, not trying to be everything.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
But for me, it was like education again, because we were framing for builders. And so I would use that as an opportunity to kind of like watch how the builders interacted with trades, with owners when they came around. And I just kind of like made my own mental notes of like, oh, this works, that doesn't work. Oh, I wonder why he says that. And then I got an opportunity to kind of go out on my own. And one of our good friends' parents were building a house, and lo and behold, boom, I got my first opportunity, and the rest is history.
They trusted you, I bet, right? Your friends' parents were like, hey, can you guide us through this process? And you can kind of get imposter syndrome sometimes. You may know the craft and feel good about it as well. How did you approach that first job so you could deliver? And
well, the first thing I did was, at the time, you need, obviously, illegal building is a big thing that we fight for as an industry. At the time, it was the Ontario New Home Warranty Program. So I knew enough from school and everything. I had to get that.
Tarion.
Right? Tarion. Well, it's Tarion now.
Yeah.
I had to get that.
What was it back then?
Ontario New Home Warranty Program is what it was called. So I went through that process, and I remember, they're kind of like looking at me like, you're too young for this. You can't be doing. I'm like, yeah, I can do this. Like, you can't tell me that I can't do this. There's no reason. Like, I'm here to do whatever testing, whatever. So anyways, I got it.
You weren't 6.
But they're like looking at me like this 20-year-old kid. Like, what are you doing in here? So I got it, and I did what I had to do, and the rest is history. I got one. Actually, the first year, I think I got 4 homes the first year.
Were they customs?
Yeah, they were custom homes.
Yeah.
I mean,
you
got better and better and bigger and bigger as you.
But it was still, they designed a plan with you. 100%. You spec'd it out, project management. Yep. Did they have the land, or did you have to source the land?
Most of them, I didn't have to source any land. They all had land.
They had a lot or something.
Yep. So whether it was like country property or an infill lot or whatever the case may be. So that's how it got started, and it's the rest is history with it.
And as you've developed, like, what are some of your favorite projects you've worked on now in the custom space versus going all the way back to the beginning? Like, let's fast forward to what types of homes. I know you won an award recently for a new build, right? So why don't you speak to that one a little bit?
So actually, I won the Ontario Home Builder of the Year for small volume. So that is, for me, like that is the Oscar for me. It's I cannot, it's what I've worked towards my entire life. So, becoming president was a huge honor for me, especially a small town guy representing the province. So that award was amazing. And we also won for best new home kitchen as well. So that was amazing, great for us, and very exciting. I built a home. There's probably, I have a lot of favorites. They're all different in their own way, but I think I built a home in Chatham, I want to say about maybe 7-8 years ago, somewhere in there. And it was a very detailed custom home. And to this day, it's made so much noise. It's one I'm very, very, very proud of. It was a home that I believe it was the first house in Ontario that used the black James Hardie siding. So I worked closely with James Hardie to, at the time, convince the homeowners, hey, this color, I know it's black and it's scary because of the dark color, and it's like no one's ever seen this, but trust me when I tell you, this house is gonna like be amazing. So they trusted us and let us do it. And I think that home, and it's been written on all over North America, that this house, I think that one, is one I'm really, really proud of. Just from a standpoint that, we took some chances on doing some different things in that home. And, the owners trusted us enough to take some chances, and it paid off. And it's one that's going to stick with me forever.
What's the name of the house? Just for reference, I'm looking for my phone because I want to write it down so I don't forget to actually pull it up and put an image on the episode.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture of
Awesome.
it for sure, because it's one that I'm really, really proud of, and so that one sticks with me. But I got so many that I'm really proud of, and each house is different. No matter the size, it doesn't matter. It's personalized, and that is the part that I enjoy the most, is designing the home with my clients.
And you won the award for small volume. What would small volume entail? Like how many units?
So it's under 35.
Okay, and it was a subdivision that you had done.
So it's just overall how many units
you're building,
whether it's one subdivision or it's
multiple
custom
homes within an area.
I fall in the small volume number. So that one was, and so when they look at it, they look at your homes, obviously, what do they look like, how you are as a builder. They also look at your involvement in the industry, and they also look at things that you've done for your community.
Sure.
So there's a bunch of things that make up the criteria for the award. So it was a huge honor.
It is a 360-degree industry when you think about it that way. Because if it's just about making money and grinding through sales and just moving on to the other one, you won't find that trust and that relationship with people as well. And I don't think you're going to grow as much as a person, right? You being involved in giving back your time to the home building associations probably made you significantly better as a builder. But then also, you're probably reaching out to the younger version of Dave that is a new person that's looking up to you and being like, hey, I'm brand new, looking for guidance. You can shepherd a better industry as a whole by giving back to those younger voices, right?
It's funny. I went to our local home builder meeting a couple weeks, probably a month ago or so. And it was a complete flashback for me. This young guy who I actually knew, he started a business. He was probably about the same age as me, and he had been invited to a meeting, which same as I was. A builder that I knew says, "Hey, come up to this," and he come up to me and he started asking questions about the industry, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness,
this is me,
like 27 years ago."
Yeah,
and I was just like, so excited for him. I'm like, you got to do this. Like, find the money. It's very minimal, but trust me when I tell you, it's going to pay off. And we've got different things that we offer now that will be so helpful for your business. So it was a huge flashback for me. Absolutely.
It makes such a difference. And I mean, you get two types of people. Probably same thing in the building industry. I see with agents every day. You get agents that they're so worried about sharing anything, as if they're going to give away their secrets and lose all their business, that they don't really build relationships. And they're always counting other people's money, and that everything's always going wrong in their life. And then when I got into the business, I went to the smartest people I could find. Be like, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing? Some of them had that mentality and were not very nice to me. And were like, I'm not telling you, shut the door. And then other ones were like, oh, this is what I did. This is what's working now. This is what I'm trying now because that doesn't work anymore. Go do whatever works for you. And like, there's a million ways to do it, right? And it's what you said at the beginning. You can look at other people as competitors or collaborators. But if you can really realize that they're not taking any food off your table, they're going to help you, it can turn into one of the best things in the world for you, right?
I think you are making the biggest mistake if you do not learn how to collaborate with like-minded individuals in your industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, you said it, and I believe that there's lots of work for everyone. Everyone will find work, especially if you believe in what you do and how you do it. But you never stop learning. Like, I'm still learning every day, and I'm not the perfect builder. Yeah. You know, I believe I have a lot of strength in a lot of areas, but I'm always picking brains, whether it's, you know, a builder or a developer. That is the beauty of being involved in an industry, especially an industry like ours. I mean, I think if you don't collaborate and take those opportunities when they come, I think you're failing yourself immensely.
Yeah, I was in New York at a big event that I think I invited your wife to, and we were having a discussion about, do you want a whole watermelon or do you want a watermelon field? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times in our business, you see that with agents, right? They're so worried about their deals, what they're working on. They don't think about the bigger picture. Where I went there and I talked to a team that, I mean, they're in a much bigger city than I am, doing much bigger deals than I am. But as we net everything out, their cost of goods and their cost of doing a deal, like they host an open house, they spend $20,000 on an open house.
Yeah, for sure.
I do an open house, like if I'm spending $2,000, I'm blowing the doors off. Like a box of Timbits and typically a sign-in sheet is all you really see in some areas here. But they're the same people that we are, just in a different place in their life and career. And I think 100% get to a local level. I see that with the boards that I've sat on with the other brokerage owners. They're usually my first phone call, right? Like when we went through some major changes from an industry perspective, and we're still going to go through more.
Yeah,
I'm calling them and being like, how are you guys handling this internally? How are you training your team? This came across from the regulatory body perspective. How are you interpreting that? Because I've talked to 5 people and they all interpret it very differently. And it allows us to create our formula on how Prime is going to approach. It's probably this very similar in the building industry, right?
Absolutely. And you have to. And I mean, even like when I look at our Home Builders Association, whether it's locally, provincially, or even, you know, across Canada, I've got so many different people that I can call. Just like your network, you know, those contacts, like you could call anyone for anything. And I think that's so important, especially when, you know, things change and things are moving and changing all the time, whether it's real estate or whether it's building or developing. You need that support, right?
Yeah, I flash back in my brain because I reached out to a guy from Calgary yesterday because we were working on a Facebook ad campaign for one of our builders. And he's like a black belt at this specific type of campaign. And I was like, oh, Mike, I haven't talked to Mike in like 6 months. Shot him a random text. He's at Tony Robbins this week with his mom until like Monday. He's like, yo, can I call you Tuesday? I'm like, 100%. In between now and then, I'm going to do some research. But I'm like, it's a fun business to be in and be in doing life with people that have a similar mindset as you, right? And you keep those people close. How do you maintain relationships, though, as the president? I mean, you would have met so many people that you probably want to keep in collaboration with. Like, is it just organic and you got a great memory, or do you have a strategy around making sure you don't forget to kind of nurture those relationships?
I mean, it's always like, you know, keeping touch, and we see one another, you know, once or twice a year, depending on how involved
at the events
that
and
member
stuff,
is. Like there's always an opportunity, and you having their contact information. So it's as simple as, you know, send an email, ask a question, hey, or let's catch up, have a call, whatever the case may be. And I think, you know, when you build that, you know, that book of contacts, and I would consider them friends, it's the best tool in the box, guaranteed.
Yeah. It's kind of like you and me, where 100%. It's like 4 or 5 times a year minimum, like randomly things would pop up where I'd see something, I'd give you a shout, or you give me a shout the other day when I was in Bayfield and you called me. I laughed because it's like we have almost the same initial conversation every time, because I'm genuinely curious, what are you seeing? Are you guys getting signed calls? Is product moving? How are you guys pricing stuff out? And then I get to take that back to my squad, share it with my team.
Yeah.
And same thing with you. Talked about an opportunity in the elevator on the way up. And it's like, it just gets the wheels spinning and you're never stuck in one place complaining because you're exposing yourself to a much bigger world, right? Nico with videographers going into Facebook groups where other people are doing what he's doing. He's going to shortcut 5 or 10 years worth of learning by reading about people's mistakes or softwares they're using or this, that, or the other, right?
Yeah, and I think, being in business as long as I have, I think it's pretty easy. And I see it sometimes with different companies, and I've been guilty of it myself, of just sort of getting comfortable, right? You get busy, you get comfortable, you think, oh, well, I've made it now. We're good.
Yeah.
And you get comfortable like that. That's a mistake.
Scary.
It's a bad spot to be in. So having contacts and having people that you can call and it motivates me per se to like think differently and try to think outside the box of different things to do. And business, you've been doing this long enough. Like, how often does how the things change and like your direction go? You're like, oh, I got to go in this direction now because this is what the market's demanding. If you sit stagnant, thinking that you've made it and you got it, man, you're gonna fail.
Literally, online ads stopped working about last year. Just the intention wasn't there, so they would click on the ad before you get them on the phone. There's pretty high intention because there wasn't much inventory. We found that we had to go back to our database, and that's how we were affecting change, was going through thousands of people and actually physically making phone calls. That's been working, but we also notice online ads are actually starting to work again too, and there's a little bit more intention. So it's just always being in motion and making adjustments. The other way too, though, is I think from a goal setting perspective, Taylor just walked in, it just triggered my brain because we did this morning, was we just looked at our 2023 goals. I read them to the team and I said my intention last year was to get better at our marketing, better at our admin, better at our training, clearer on our brand guidelines, and recruit and train the right people and repel the wrong people. That was our intention last year. We discussed this is the results of this year. Really happy with ABCDE. We've had some massive changes to our structures and what we're looking at in terms of our partnerships, how Nico and I are working together, how Taylor and I and the rest of the team are operating, getting some really good feedback, and then making massive goals for next year and be like, okay, what do we have to do to affect change in these areas, and then adjust over the next year or go through our quarters and tweak the system to get better every single year. And I think that's what you're talking about, is you've probably done that with your business every year after a build, being like, awesome, what lessons did we learn and how can we make the next one better? Is that something that's always kind of tracked?
Yeah, and then communicating that to the team and maybe the roles of some of your key players need to change because they've gotten better in different areas.
Sure. And
maybe they need more responsibility in different areas. And then from an administrative point of view, looking at how you put jobs together, how you manage jobs.
Sure.
Marketing. Like that to me changes like
every day.
That is a full-time job itself, is managing your marketing and creating ideas that I think will work or that I think are going to be successful for how I want to be represented and showing obviously the work that we do and those sorts of things. So I'm constantly learning and researching social media and how it changes and trying to find the best fit for me.
Do you draw inspiration from other builders or stuff you see online?
Some. It's not always builders. I mean, I look at it could be like a health person, and just maybe something they've said that has triggers me, or a real estate agent, or like whatever. It's not just strictly builders. Absolutely, there are some builders that I look at from across North America, and you go, wow, that's an interesting idea. I think that's a good fit for me. But
the guy that built Drake's house, Ferris Folly. You ever see his stuff?
Yeah, he's
it's outrageous.
Legit. Yeah, like, he's a incredible inspiration. The way he thinks. Well, and I don't know if it's him that does the posts, but they're very strategic, and he can take something that he take this coffee cup and just make it look like I want that coffee cup.
I know.
It's amazing. Look at this coffee cup.
There's a design component, and I think what he's building and selling. You're talking tens of millions of dollars, some of these properties too. You're going to put that much into it versus you can scale that to your own personal business and your brand and review your voice, right? We've talked a lot about the media that we're doing, and I still want to make massive improvements to it so that it tracks to who I am when you actually get to work with me. Because I do find if your brand is not an accurate representation of you, you're going to probably attract the wrong types of people, the wrong types of clients. What is the right type of client for you in your custom home space? Like, what type of client avatar do you guys search for?
So for me, when I meet with people, I like to understand how they are and understand what their wants are. But I firmly believe that my clients need to really, really trust me. Like, we're a team. Mm-hmm. That perception of, the builder versus the owners, that's not my gig. Maybe it's out there. I don't know.
Right. I've seen that with some builders that are like, don't come on site. Don't call me for change orders. Like, just a very odd,
or
adversarial relationships.
Thinking that,
I know better.
Every time there's an extra or change, it's like, oh, the builder's like ripping me off. It's like, no. They have to understand, for me, that we're working together. Yeah. This is us together from the design, and probably 90 to 95% of my builds are I do the design with the client. So we learn how one another operate and how each other works, and by the time we actually get to the build, it's organic. Like we're friends. We understand how each other operates. We understand each other's habits. I'm here for you, and for me, that's the biggest thing for me. Mm-hmm. Is you have to trust me. You just have to, and I need to trust you as well.
For sure.
And so when that happens, the build process it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it should be awesome. It's a fun thing to do. So I really look at that. That's if I don't feel like it's a good fit, or like, they're very hesitant to, like, they have that mindset, it's going to be a tough sell for me.
The other thing we do when we do our goal settings, we look at all the deals we did in the last year, and we rate them 1 out of 10. And we look at our 8s to 10s, and they're usually people that exact relationship you described. They trust us, they're fun, they gave us some leeway with the marketing, and they believe that, we give them advice and pricing strategy, that we're giving them the right advice and pricing strategy. The 1 to 2s are the ones that don't, right? And I should have known from the beginning, it was in my gut. Either just there wasn't a synergy. Did it take you a while to figure out who your 1s to 2s are and who your 8 to 10s are, like that gut feel?
Yeah, it took a lot of many years, because when you start out, I was like, I'd take anything. Like, sure. You want to build a house? I want your house. I want your house. Like, every house, I want it. And that's just being young and starting your business, being aggressive and finding your way. But I think it took me a few years to, like, really start to understand. And actually, where I started to really feel it more was when I decided that, okay, I'm going to really lean into the design portion of the process, because I love it. I understand how the home's built. I understand. I think I understand how it should look, because once I speak to the clients and I get to understand what they're sort of looking for, most of them don't know how to tell you what the house looks like. They've got a bunch of different pictures of things they like, and it's like creating that for them. So I've always taken great pride in loving that part of my job. And so through that design phase, you really get to know people, like, and understand them. And so it actually becomes a really enjoyable part.
And on the design side, how do you get to a product when the client even can't tell you what they look like? I like chip and join gains. I like farmhouses. I like moderns. Like, what type of stuff are you trying to ask them or ascertain a style for a house?
So I like to see photos. Like, because what I like may be completely different than what you like or they like, right? So it's like, show me some photos. Like, it doesn't have to be the exact house, but, like, show me what you like. It could be, I love this window, or I like this front door, I like the way the front of this house looks. Like,
colors, palettes,
and like what your kitchen, what is your, because it could be this rustic farmhouse exterior, but like super modern inside. And it's like, well, we got to find a medium that works, and getting them to those rights, the space that works. So I like to kind of see what their interests are, is the way I put it. And then we start to, collaborate. Do they have land? Don't they have land? Usually we need to get to that point where they have land, so we can design the home to actually fit the property and make sure we're
with depth,
within,
bungalow, 2-story.
But a lot of times when we're at that stage, the clients have the property or in the process of getting it. So then we start sort of that initial discussion of like, just drawing it out on a piece of paper by hand and saying, does this work? Does that work? Like, is this sort of what you're envisioning? And then when I get it to a space of like where we're on to the direction, then there's 2 or 3 different architects that I use to actually do the drawings for me. And then I just basically take that portfolio and just chime them in when I need them. So I take that onus off of them. I deal with the architect myself. So him and I will go back, or her, go back and forth to kind of get the concepts so they don't have to worry about it or be stressed about it. And then I go, hey, how does this look? Do you like this? These are the pros and cons, and are we on the right track? And we modify, and then I go back again and we start to work our way to the roof and the exterior and the whole, and they really don't have to feel that pressure at all, because that can be overwhelming for clients.
You probably go from like 10, 12 revisions to like 3 or 4.
100%.
Right? Because you can work through, I know they're going to say this. Here's your options, come back. And you're giving great feedback to the architects. We try and do the same thing for our builders, where you don't want to necessarily talk to 1,000 leads. You want to talk to the 10 that actually want to buy properties, right? Yep. What are the 3 things or a couple things that drive you nuts about real estate agents?
Oh,
safe place. We won't mention any names.
So I feel like the work that's involved in building a home from start to finish and the warranty of it versus the selling of the home, there's a big gap there, in my opinion. And it can sometimes, not always, but sometimes the scale of, what that's worth can be out of proportion, if I'm being politically correct.
Sure.
And it can work, and it can work amazing.
Yeah.
If you can find that balance. And when that balance works, it can work. Right? So that's one. I think another one is not being fully educated on the process of building a new home, because it's completely different than buying one.
For sure.
So making sure that agents are very knowledgeable on how the process works. They don't have to know how to build a home per se, but understand the ins and outs of that. And I think making sure that agents wholeheartedly use a new home as something to look at, and not just look at it from a commission perspective. And I'm not saying it probably, I'm sure it happens where it's like, hey, there's a new home, but maybe I'm not going to show you that new home because the commission may not be as high as this resale home. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, if this doesn't happen. Those are 3 things that I think if you find that mix, it's great for everybody.
Yeah, I asked the question because I'm always, again, trying to improve the system, right? And we don't, I always joke that we're not real estate agents. We just play them on TV because we do things very differently than your average agent, I would say. I don't think you're wrong with, my issue with during the bull run was agents were coming down the highway, dropping off their buyers and just expecting a full commission for doing nothing. They'd hand it over to the builder. They wouldn't read the contracts, wouldn't be there for PDIs. They weren't involved in anything in terms of the process. And I can understand certain builders not wanting them to be overly involved, especially if they're uneducated, because they're showing up trying to play the hero, making the process way more complicated than it needs to be, when really it's agreement of purchase and sale. What's the price, closing dates? What are you agreeing to? Are they covering the carry-on fee or not? The complexities. Are you buying this for yourself, or is it investment? Because there's massive HST implications on those things. Like little basic things that the agents should know. The second piece you mentioned the third piece was the steering, right? So steering, it's not supposed to happen, but I'm sure there's agents out there that do, right? Based on cooperating commissions or different inducements. it's one of the most unethical things in our industry. And like, just like you're fighting for the building industry, when I was on professional standards and the committees I was on, we were heavily involved in adjudicating cases where things like that were being complained at by the consumers. I think the consumers have to be educated as well and make sure that they're hiring agents, not just based on who's going to do it for cheapest or their uncle happens to be in the business, but people that are actually professionals. I think our industry as a whole lacks a standard of care, right? There should be a designation for a residential resale agent versus commercial versus a new home specialist, in my opinion, and an investment specialist. The way it is right now, you get licensed, you can sell anything to anybody, right? You don't have to understand how commercial real estate works. You can do the course, but you could do commercial real estate. I can sell an investment property to Nico. I can do a duplex with him. And even if I don't know how to analyze numbers on a deal and tell him if it cash flows. And again, for new home, I think there should be a new home designation for real estate agents. So, you know, if you're dealing with a professional that understands the ins and outs of dealing with Terrion, new home construction. I will challenge you on the commission side of things, where the way I look at it is my compensation is directly proportional to what I yield you as a result of your 30 homes you sell a year across your projects. Now, if I'm not delivering on that in terms of tabling opportunities, marketing and advertising, pricing discovery, leveraging the network that I've built, then yeah, my commission won't be justified. And I have to net that out to my clients and sit down and say, was I able to bring you more value than you gave me for X amount of commission that you paid me? And I think the majority of our industry doesn't. I think the majority of real estate agents sign it up, put it on MLS, hire the same photographers, maybe do a video. But after that, what really makes them different from each other? Yeah. They all hire the same people. What do they do that warrants that additional commission? And I think that we're going to see changes in our industry over the next 3 to 5 years where they're going to have to justify it, or there's going to be very cheap options out there. And there's going to be no middleman. It'll be, you're paying for my expertise for pricing, marketing, negotiation, and my network, or you're just going to go with a done-for-you service that gets you on the MLS. But those are the two very, very different services I think that you're going to see moving forward.
Yeah, and I agree. And like I mentioned earlier, like I think that we need one another. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
It's just making sure that our end and your end, both industries, find that 100%. Happy balance, and we're rolling, right? And that is the key. And you know, it's hard to find that happy balance with everybody, right?
I also think I can probably list 5 other things that agents do that drive you nuts, because I'm always trying to figure it out so I can answer the questions. I think they overpromise and under-deliver, right? They pitch really well. There's zero follow-up, right? They don't do the work to go and find the buyers. They wait for them to come to themselves. They don't come to you with, here's what's happening in the market. That house sold around the corner from you. This is why it sold for that price point. I did the discovery with the agent on the call. It was complicated. It went multiples because of this. Like the data, I think that's a great opportunity zone for agents to be bringing you information that, where do I sign? Like if you can handle the pricing, the marketing, the negotiation, and I can just keep building, great. But a lot of builders have had to go internal with their sales teams because they just couldn't find anybody that would actually deliver on the promises that they've made, right?
Yeah, and I think there's I'm a smaller builder, right? And larger building firms, maybe there's a different, maybe they have their own internal sales staff, but there's a huge gap there for like guys like me. Like I need agents for some sales, right? Not all, but there's lots of times I do. So I think, finding the right agent and finding the right recipe that works, that's fair for both industries, which is easy to do. It's just communication, right? And figuring it out. There's a need. There's a need for both of us.
I'm totally going to pick your brain. What do you like from communication from agents? Say you've got a property listed. We're in a market that we're in now. It is November 2024. So it's not a crazy frothy market. How often do you like to be reported on, and what do you like to know in terms about like activity, market, that type of stuff?
Yeah, like for me, like what things are selling for that are comparables, like what opportunities are, is there a hole is there a gap that we're missing somewhere that could be an opportunity? I think being on par with how the market and the numbers fluctuate, and if there's something that needs to be changed as a builder, if you were coming to me and say, hey, like this house has to be a bit cheaper for the market rate, is there a way we can do that? Like, tell me, you're the
Yeah.
builder. Can you think of anything? Here's the areas that maybe we could be, no one cares about this piece anymore. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
So can that go, right? Is it a finish? Is it
You
something?
probably have a Rolodex in your head though from working with clients where they're like, I got to get my budget here, where that you can piecemeal the house and say, yeah, we can pull a little bit from here, a little bit from here.
Yeah, it's those little nuggets, like, and in communicating that. So it's not like you come to me and go, like, man, like, your houses are too expensive, and then I'm like, well, your commission's too high, right?
Yeah,
so
for
it's
sure.
like finding that happy medium
Yeah.
of like, hey, we need to be
We
lower.
need to be at the 750 mark for
Yeah.
product to sell right now. That's just what
So
it is, right?
That's the kind of communication that I like, right?
Yeah. No, and where do you see your industry going? And let's stick maybe with the custom builds that you're doing, the types of people that are buying these homes, investing money. Where do you see your industry going in terms of, is it bigger houses, rural lots? Is it, what type of patterns are you seeing?
So rural lots are getting harder and harder, as you well know, to find. Depending on the area you're at, I'm more of a agricultural community, so those pieces are still out there. Waterways, water areas, lakes, rivers, there are still pieces. So those are always the gems. I'm just finding people want sort of what they want now.
Yeah.
It's not like, there's not a lot in the custom industry. There's not a lot of like, compromise on sort of the size, right? When you're doing a custom home, it's like you're building that forever home for the most part. So you want to sort of finish it the way you want. There's sometimes, everybody has a budget, and there are ways where you have to go, hey, this is sort of the line because we got to stay here. But there's also ways of like maybe giving, a certain look and scaling it back a bit, but achieving the same thing, right? But I think, people are, and I believe, and I mentioned it earlier, I think energy efficiency is going to be is a big one that I think people are really going to start leaning into. I think now more than ever, I see that as a big trend in my opinion, and sort of in the custom world, building that dream home, and whether it's everybody has a budget, so that size is always a big thing, size and sort of a wanted end number, and trying to achieve that. But that's where I see the custom market.
Yeah, I think it'll be similar to what I said with the agents, right? I think you'll have the done for you, lower cost services, and then I'm still seeing a lot of opportunity in Canada. I think we've struggled for the last, call it 4 years after the pandemic. We went through, I think, 5 years of appreciation in 2, and then that got balanced out over the last 3. I think it's been a struggle from a leadership and a, call it, citywide perspective, and the pendulum swung. I think we're in a great opportunity zone moving forward. I think Southwestern Ontario, as a market as a whole, it's very young in terms of a country in its growth stages. And I think you're going to see a lot of people migrating, looking for opportunity, coming to Canada, obviously moving down the highway from the GTA, where we think it's unaffordable because we're located here. But if somebody could buy a townhouse for $750 in Mississauga, they'd buy every single one, 100%. Right? So sometimes, getting out and looking at what's happening outside of your market will give you a little bit of perspective of what's coming to your market. But I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I do think that the rural lots, country living, we're getting more and more calls from people that hybrid lifestyle. They're going 4 days at their farm, and then they're going to the city for a day or two, spending the weekend in Toronto, and then coming back home for those 2 or 3 day work weeks. I'm seeing people homeschool more often, building up communities in communities too, right? So I know we're going to be doing a lot of work in your market, in your area, and spending a lot more time together. So I'm looking forward to having you back on an episode, showcasing some of your product. I know you've got some pretty cool houses, and I'd love to get in and see some. But I'm looking forward to seeing where you go from all your experience on the Ontario Home Building Association. Congrats again on the Low Volume Builder of the Year, and excited to see what you do next.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. And I love talking our industry. I love talking houses. So let's do this again.
I'm going to introduce you to Larry Clay. Does that name ring a bell? So he was the previous president of the Canadian Home Builders Association. So he was on my podcast a while ago, came as a reference from a media friend of mine.
Oh, good.
Monster. Like, talk about. He does some pretty cool media stuff too on energy efficiency homes. He's located out in BC. I think you'll get a kick out of him too.
BC's
so.
a whole other planet, man. They are so far advanced.
Out west is too, right? Like Calgary, Alberta, all those. Their standards are here, where we're still a pretty young market when it comes to
but
stuff.
it's good to see. Like, that's the beauty of being as part of the association. Like, we talk.
It's standard there. Like their standards are basically green energy, net zero.
Yeah.
We're here. We're just on our way up there,
Yeah.
right? Which is pretty wild.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is great, man. Love it.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you coming down.